Hi everyone, my name is Daniela So, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how to effectively read and summarize an expository text. This is going to be an important skill for you as you go into reading text for this class and possibly others. First, reading strategies. Number one, it's really important to survey or skim your reading. A lot of readers like to just go ahead and start reading the text word for word for word, every sentence. But it's actually a very important reading habit, an active reading skill, to just glimpse through the text first and see what it might encompass. So looking it over, surveying, or skimming, right? That's different from scanning, by the way. If you're scanning a text, it means you're actually hunting for maybe a word or a name or a piece of information. You're reading for a specific targeted purpose. But we're just talking about surveying and skimming. And what you're really doing with your eyes is a specific kind of movement, right? You're trying to take in the title, the background information on the work, who's the author, where was this published, what are some of the subheadings if it is organized in such a fashion. There might be an introduction, middle, and conclusion kind of setup. And if there are any illustrations or visual diagrams, it's always important to take a look at those. It's actually surprising how common it is for readers to ignore visuals as they're reading their history or a psychology textbook. Most people seem to just pay attention to the text on the page, the words themselves, rather than the visual diagrams that are there to enhance what you're supposed to be learning. So lastly, you might want to see if there's any questions at the end of the reading. Not every handout has questions, but it's important to keep an eye out for those anyway. Next is reading strategies. Number 2, become an active reader by asking questions. And what that means is, are you challenging the author? Don't just take everything that the author says as truth. Some things you might ask and say, well, what if this situation? Is that still part of the circumstance the author's talking about? It could be not only a what if question, it could be a why type of question, or you might be asking a question out of simple confusion. I don't understand what he's saying. Does he mean this? What does he or she mean by this? Do they want me thinking about this? Is this what they want me comprehending? Right, so you can ask questions. A lot of the time you can just put a simple question mark if you're not sure what a passage means, and that will tell you later when you revisit a text that you should go back and review the parts you maybe didn't quite comprehend as well as the other parts. And sometimes it's just for reflection, just for you to think about, engage with the text itself, what your thoughts are. So that's another reason why we ask questions. Reading strategies continue. Number 3, read actively by underlining or highlighting. And you're doing this the entire time. As you're going through the text, you've got your pen out or maybe a highlighter, and you're skimming and scanning for information, specifically main ideas and support in the paragraphs. So you're thinking about, well, what's the author's main point? What's the takeaway from this particular passage? And you would underline that part. You would also underline anything that looks like support, any type of evidence, and that could be a fact, an expert testimony, personal testimony, logical reasoning. Like if you see a because statement, that's the author providing a reason or an explanation. Those all count as support, right? Answers to questions. So let's say you already posed a question. If the author actually answers one of your questions later in the text, make note of that in the margins of the text. And if you notice any keywords, some authors have coin terms or keywords, you want to just underline those just to keep them in mind. You don't want to underline all the words in a sentence. You probably aren't going to underline words like to, a, the, of, right? You know, those kinds of small words. So try to be picky if you can. Try not to underline full sentences if you can help it, or full paragraphs. You're really aiming for something like 30 to 40% of the text is underlined or highlighted. And then you're actively using the margins as well to cover anything that you are reacting to or questioning or summarizing. And that takes us to point number 4, which is, in order to be an active reader, you should be annotating in the margins of the text. And it's really important because it represents your intense involvement. It takes you immediately from passive reading to engaged and active reading. You want to have a say too in what the author is talking about. And one thing that students don't always realize is that as they're highlighting or underlining main ideas and support, they're simultaneously supposed to be writing, quick phrases, comments, questions in the margin. So this is all happening actively. Here's an example of active reading. It's just a passage of a text called Women in Witchcraft by Mary Beth Norton. And if you study it, what's working here is that not everything is underlined. Just keywords, phrases, occasionally maybe a lot of a sentence, but we usually will skip small words like and or for, okay? And if you look in the margins, there are also phrasal ideas. They're not even complete sentences. They're just thoughts gathering what the passage is talking about. There's even a question posed, why mostly women? And that's all you have to do is just make it your own. Mark up the text. If you have any questions about this PowerPoint, go ahead and contact me at daniela.so@gccd.edu and I'll respond to your questions.